Just when I thought I had no hype for Warhammer Underworlds Season 4 Direchasm, they drop a bombshell with the newest warband, Slaanesh's Dread Pageant. Now that sounds like a pageant I want to go to. And there are some amazing cards in this set and some amazing fighters. Couldn't be more excited. Let's jump in and review what we have so far. Hello everyone and welcome back to the BattleCast. I love these videos, and I gotta say, I'm pretty stoked about the Slaanesh's Dread Pageant. They look really good, and this is not only because I think their fighter cards are pretty decent, but they have a nice spread of powerful objectives, upgrades, and ploys, which is something you need to make a good warband. So let's go ahead and jump into the fighter cards. Starting off with Vasilak the Gifted. This is the leader of the warband, coming in at 4 movement, 4 health, 1 shield. Not a bad stat line. Now he has a range 2, 2 hammer attack for 2 damage. And we've noticed kind of throughout the starter kit, Direchasm, that range is a lot more common. You know, we're seeing a lot of range 2 fighters, 3, 4, even 5. So, you know, we're used to seeing a lot of range 1. Not so here. A lot of range. That's really going to actually change the gameplay quite a bit. Now the Inspire mechanic for the Dread Pageant is after an activation, surviving fighters have 6 or more wound counters. So across all surviving fighters, friend or foe, 6 wound counters need to be present. This is not a particularly easy mechanic to score. It is made easier by the fact that this warband is high wound generally. They have ways to inflict wounds on themselves and heal them off, which is nice. And they have some cards that can help, you know, accomplish this. And that's not counting the universals like Collapse, etc. So not easy, but not impossible. Now Vasilak also has a reaction, which I kind of mentioned. During this fighter's attack action after the deal damage step, pick one, deal a damage to this fighter, meaning him, or heal him, which is great. Now you will notice that it says the deal damage step, which means that this attack needs to be successful, which is a barrier in its own right. But think of it this way. If you hit someone for 2 and you take a damage, you're halfway to inspiring. So that's, you know, it's not too bad. Now Inspired, he actually goes up to movement 5, which is, I mean, that's very fast. Range 5 with, you know, actually his stat profile is basically the exact same as Scritch, who gets Cleave, 3 damage, range 2 for 2 hammers, 5 movement, 4 health. He does get 1 shield though still. He doesn't go up in shields or anything, despite the fact that he's holding a shield, so too bad. The reaction doesn't change, but you know, this is not a bad stat profile for a leader at all. The other thing to mention about this warband is that they inspire all at the same time. And personally, I really like warbands that inspire at the same time. I find it's very powerful. It makes focusing on inspiring very important. And, you know, when it brings stat buffs to everyone, I mean, it can really turn the tide. And what's cool is it can trigger off of you taking damage. So, you know, you may not, you know, you might be getting your butt kicked a bit and get this off. So that's kind of nice. Next, we have a very cool fighter. Now, this is Slaanesh, and he is like the meat and potatoes of this warband. This guy has 5 wounds to start. We're talking Gurzeg here, right? Like, this is a big deal. 5 wounds is very valuable because he's the kind of fighter you just put up there, and you know damn well turn 1 he's not going to die unless, you know, things line up very well for your opponent. 4 movement, 1 shield. Again, 4 movement on a 5 wound fighter is pretty impressive. I mean, the guy knows how to throw down. He has the exact same reaction as Vasilak, the heal or deal damage, and his attack profile is 3 swords for 2, which is actually very nice. 3 swords is a great profile because, you know, you're fishing for that critical. And what's very interesting about this fighter is he counts as Hunter and Quarry. This is very important. There are so many cards that benefit from, well, we know benefit from being Hunter, but also benefit from being Quarry. And achieving both at the same time is rather hard. To become Quarry, you must equip a certain upgrade, or you must, rely on a ploy. And as a result, putting objectives in your deck that require you to be Quarry is a little risky, unless you're against Hrothgorn. He gets both. I mean, he can score a lot of cards because of those two keywords. It might seem like a weakness, but it is very strong indeed. Now, Inspired, his movement goes up to 5, which again, that's a big deal for such a beefy fella. He gets 4 swords for 2 damage. Now, his damage doesn't go up, and you'll notice this Warband's damage is they're not very one-hitty, but 4 swords is nothing to scoff at. I mean, that's super serious. Reaction stays the same, health stays the same, but this is a very good fighter. Not to gush, but the other thing I love about Slake Slash is that if you put him forward at 5 health, and then you let your opponent go first, if they want to come in and try and kill him, they might. They might do 2-3 damage, but on your next activation, if you connect with him, you can damn near inspire your whole warband, which is pretty dope. Next we have Glissette, the best a man can get. I didn't come up with that, I don't think, but now that I've heard it, I can't unhear it, and that's just going to be the way it is now. We all have to accept that that's who this is now. She's a very, very interesting fighter. In fact, I love this fighter. Range 2, which is, again, we're seeing more of that range. 2 swords for 2. Now, we've been here before. 2 swords is, oh boy. I still have trauma from Haka and Basha just sucking so hard. But what's very interesting is she counts as on guard, period. And with 2 dodge, that makes her an exceptionally resilient fighter, even though she has 2 health. I mean, you sneeze at her, you connect anything, and she's dead. But 2 dodge and shield is very impressive. She can't be pushed, or driven back rather. Very exceptional. Range 4, again, that's a 6 hex threat range with her movement 4. Now when Inspired, she gets an extra die on her attack, so 3 sword for 2. That's a little more respectable. I mean, I will count on that hitting more often than not. And she does get a whirl, 3 sword for 1. And what's a bit of a shame is that, the scything attack with such a high movement fighter would be very good for inspiring your warband. I mean, I would love to have Glissette run in, do a spin, and help get inspired, but obviously she needs to be inspired to get it. You probably aren't going to be using that. I don't know. I mean, maybe there's a card out there, but anyway. She stays at 2 health. I mean, she is the definition of a glass cannon. Very interesting. And next we have Hadzu, who is actually one of my favorite ranged fighters in the game. And I'll explain why. Now he's 3 swords for 1 damage. And 3 swords is a fairly consistent ranged attack. Beats the hell out of 2 swords, I'll tell you that. What I like about Hadzu is his, of course, baked in keywords here. Arrow of Desire. The implications are really good. I mean, if somebody's on guard, okay, and they're on an objective, and you hit them with this, well, guess what? Not only did you not need to succeed because, the drive back step, you can be tied, but now you can push. So actually, guard doesn't make you immune to push. It makes you immune to drive back. So you actually can knock people off objectives who are on guard, who, can't be driven back. This is what's up. I mean, it's a fairly cool fighter. His stat line is 4 movement, 1 dodge for 2. This is definitely the guy who's going to die first if you put him in danger. Now, when he's inspired, his attack actually goes up to range 4. Now, this is when I really think he starts to, turn on. Movement 5, dodge 2. But again, that Arrow of Desire. On the whole, I was hoping the inspired side of these fighter cards would be a little more killy. That's not the case. I mean, the Dread Pageant, when compared to Mayari's Purifiers, kind of, just generally have less reliable killiness. But boy, oh boy, wait till you see their objective, upgrade, and Gambit cards. So let's go ahead and jump into them. Now the first objective we have here is Cavalcade of Madness. It's a dual card. Score this in end phase if there are 3 or more surviving friendly fighters, and each friendly fighter is inspired. Now this is an interesting objective. I mean, it scores for 2, which is great. And furthermore, the Warband inspires as 1. So that's a big deal. Anytime, Warband inspires as 1, this card's just saying, are you inspired, basically. But it's not an easy inspire mechanic, or at least as so far as we know. We know, for example, this inspire mechanic is kind of similar to the Worm Spat, where they rely on people being damaged, but they were just the enemy. These can be any, and this Warband has a whole myriad of abilities to damage themselves to kind of help you control that inspire mechanic a bit more. So I think this is cool. Again, it's going to require a bit more testing to see if this is actually going to be a great card or just a so-so card. The next card is insane. Honestly, I'm very excited about it. It's Beautiful Deaths. It's a dual card. Score this in un-end phase if there are 3 or more surviving friendly fighters and 3 or more enemy fighters are out of action. Now this is a pretty intense card. You only have 4 fighters, so you can only lose 1. But the key here, which I love, is un-end phase. This is really important because a lot of this type of card can only be scored in the 3rd end phase. So because it's un-end phase is quite nice. Furthermore, it's 6 glory, which is insane. And obviously its scoreability is quite variable depending on who you're facing. If you're facing the Worm Spat, good luck. But if you're facing like the Goblins, well, you might actually get this. So I don't think it's going to be an optimal card to play, but I think it has its place. It's definitely pretty cool, and it can be scored, any round, which I think is a big deal. Next, we have an end phase card, Scintillating Sadism. They are loving the alliteration here, and I love that they are using words that rarely make it into my vocabulary. So this is score this in an end phase if each surviving enemy fighter has 1 or more wound counters. This is an amazing card, in my opinion. The reason it's cool is because, just how Beautiful Deaths applied to larger warbands where you can kill lots of them easier, this one can actually apply to smaller warbands. With the Worm Spat, if they just had 1 guy left and it was damaged, you score this card. So again, the scoreability varies, but I think it is a cool card, and, with enough plink, you can set this up. I like this card quite a bit. And this warband doesn't really seem to have a huge amount of one-hit potential, so I think you are going to be leaving people with wounds left. Next we have Grisly Tableau, a surge card for 1. Score this immediately when a friendly fighter's attack action takes an enemy fighter holding an objective out of action. Fine, maybe. This warband actually does have quite a bit of pushing and enemy manipulation, so, but, these are easier said than done sometimes, I find. Next we have Excess of Gluttony. Score this immediately after an activation if 1 or more friendly fighters are each adjacent to 2 or more enemy fighters. The wording here is kind of interesting, but basically you just have to charge someone in to next to 2 people and next to 2 enemies, and you score this card, which is great. That's rather easy to do, especially given the high movement of this warband. But the wording is such that you would also score it if you had 2 people next to 2 enemy fighters. You score this basically anytime anyone in your warband is next to 2, which is quite easy, I think. So I think this card's really great. Next we have Excess of Carnality, a surge card. Score this immediately after an activation if 2 or more friendly fighters are adjacent to the same enemy fighter. This is very easy. Again, you've got movement 4, and you actually have a bunch of push mechanics with this warband. So I think this is going to be a pretty easy card to score. And again, just nice, easy glory to get that ball rolling. Next, we have Excess of Avidity. And this is a score and end phase for 2 glory if your warband holds more objectives than any other warband. I love this card. We had Reclaim the Lamentari for Yolthari's Guardians, which was always very powerful. And I believe we had one for Lady Harrow's, which is basically the exact same. Holding more objectives is great, because that could mean 1, and this is worth 2 glory. I think that this is always going to be worth running because, you need end phase cards, and you can sneak this guy out, you can push people off of stuff. Very good. You also get this easier the more people you kill, so it kind of ties into aggressive warbands as well. Next we have Endless Revel. This is a score immediately objective for 1. Score this immediately after an activation if each surviving friendly fighter has 1 or more move or charge tokens on them. Easy. Easy peasy lemon squeezy. This is probably their best surge card, because what's crazy is that there's no limiting factor. It's not saying if at least 3, or if at least 4, any. If you have 1 person left and you have move or charge, you get this. If you are on round 1 and you move everybody, you get this. It is a pretty much, you're going to get this. It's an auto score and it's wonderful. And in fact, it's kind of cool because it tailors itself to your need. You know, if you only have 2 fighters left, you can score this very quickly, which might give you the glory you need to get some defensive upgrades or whatever. So great card, really good. Next we have God Seekers. Score this in an end phase if each surviving friendly fighter is in enemy territory. This is for 2. This is an amazing card. Conquest is, you know, a good card. Conquest is run to this day, but what makes it tricky is it's a 3rd end phase card. Well, this is a score in any phase card, and that's a big deal. It is not a dead card, especially when you have movement 4 fighters who will get into enemy zone, and especially when it's each surviving friendly fighter. So you could have 1 left, and if you get in enemy zone, you score this. So this is a very good card. Next, we have an upgrade called Excess of Vainglory, and this is a Surge hybrid card. Basically, you score this after an attack action if you kill an enemy with 2 upgrades on them, or your fighter has 3 upgrades on them when they make the attack. Now, this is interesting because this is a hybrid card, and you always have to be aware of hybrid cards because of adaptive strategy, which is an objective you score if you score 5 hybrid cards. And this warband, I believe, has 4, so, you know, maybe we're going to see that happen. Furthermore, I like that while the first portion of the attack has to be successful, which is like a little sketchy, the second portion is quite controllable. You just have 3 upgrades, make an attack, doesn't matter if you succeed, so that's kind of cool. I like that. Next we have a really weird card, Excess of Paramancy. It's a hybrid card. You score this in an end phase if your leader holds an objective in enemy territory, or their leader holds an objective in your territory. Now this is actually kind of a fun card because it sort of pairs off of Bold Conquest, which is a commonly run card, which is kind of cute. So like they charge their leader into your zone to hold an objective, and you're like, ah, I score this, which I like. It does pair well with Bold Conquest if you can keep your guy on that objective. I don't know if it's an amazing card per se, but it's not bad. The last objective we have is Excess of Indolency, and it's a hybrid card. Score this in an end phase if there are no enemy fighters with any move or charge tokens, or your warband holds 2 or more objectives. This is an interesting card. I mean, technically, if you kill them all, they won't have those tokens, so that's kind of nice. And holding 2 or more objectives is fine, but it's an end phase. This is one of their weaker score objective cards, so I'm not, you can't all win here, so this is that card. Now we're moving on to the Gambit cards, and there's some really good ones in here. The first card we have is Dark Desires. Choose an enemy fighter. The chosen player must pick 1. Give that fighter a move token, or let you push that fighter 1 hex. This is interesting. Obviously, if you choose a fighter who hasn't moved, their person is, their player is most likely going to let them push instead of give them a move. But it is interesting because, for example, if they're on an objective that they want to hold, well, they'll just let you put a move token on them and they'll hold the objective. You're not likely going to choose someone who has already moved because then they'll just say, well, guess what? Give them another move token. So it's no distraction, that's for sure. I like the balancing aspect of it, but it is quite weak. As I say, if somebody's holding an objective, which is often why you would want to push them, they'll just take a move token. So I don't know if I actually like this card too much. I like the pro and con of it, the balancing of it. It's probably more likely going to be used to either push a fighter closer to you so you can kill them, or, take a fighter or give them a move and thereby taking them out of the fight. So we'll see. Next we have Cruel Pangs. Choose one fighter holding an objective, deal a damage to that fighter. This is fine. Plink damage is important, especially when your Warband inspires based off of damage done. So again, we're going to have to see how hard it is to inspire, but with the likes of Collapse and cards like that, I don't know if Cruel Pangs is going to find it into your deck. You might just want to take cards like Collapse, which are better bang for buck, but here we are. Next we have Bonded Bodyguard. Now this is a specific Gambit card for Slaanesh, and it's a reaction. After another friendly fighter's move action, if that fighter is not adjacent to a friendly Slaanesh, push a friendly Slaanesh up to 2 hexes. After the move, that Slaanesh must be no more than 2 hexes from a friendly Vassalac. Now that's not a tongue twister, I don't know what it is, but basically what it's saying is that Slaanesh and Vassalac are homies, they always have to be close together. Now, after any of your other people move, you basically can push Slaanesh, 2 hexes, but he has to stay close to Vassalac. This is interesting. Obviously, there's an objective that score. There's objectives that score if you're in your enemy zone. There's objectives that score if you're next to enemy fighters, or if there's 2 of you next to the same fighter. So this is cool. Push 2 should never be disregarded. But yeah, we'll just have to see how they play. I mean, yeah, this has a place, maybe. It's Slaanesh specific. He has 5 health, so he's not going anywhere. This is probably going to be worth running, but we'll just have to get a better sense of the Warband. Next we have Lure of Slaanesh. Choose one fighter, push the chosen fighter 1 hex, or up to 1 hex for each surviving friendly fighter with 1 or more wound tokens on them. This is really interesting because, it's a push 1, great. It's a push 1 which makes our friend, the Dark Desires, look kind of shitty because this is a non-controllable push. It's like the Earth Shakes from the Dwarves, where it can choose either your fighters or their fighters, so it's very flexible. If you have a wound token on each of your fighters, all 4 of them, this is a push 4 on enemy or friend, and that's pretty crazy. I mean, pushing an enemy 4 towards you, like, oh my god, they're so dead, and then pushing you 4, like, the implications of this card are amazing. At the end of the day, it's an Earth Shakes, which is one of the Chosen Axe's strongest cards by far. Here it is here, and it's even better. Love it. One of the best cards we've seen, for sure. Next, we have Fueled by Sensation. Choose a friendly fighter. They either heal 1 or take a damage. This is interesting. With the low health of this Warband, healing 1 doesn't strike me as particularly effective. Dealing a damage, however, can help you inspire, even though it is friendly, so we'll see. I don't love it on first look. Next we have Enervating Perfume. Now this is a Vassalac specific ploy card. -1 damage from the first attack action in the next activation to a minimum of 1. I like these cards. I think that this kind of card is very cool because, if your opponent is setting up a big swing or a big turn, you can ruin their day a bit. I don't know if it's going to be enough because you do have 2 health fighters. So if they've, ramped themselves up to kill Slaanesh, and then you play this card so they can't, they might just turn their gaze on someone else and crunk them. So we'll see. Next we have Deadly Embrace. Now this is as a reaction, so play this during an enemy fighter's range 1 or 2 attack action that targets a friendly fighter. After the deal damage step, if the friendly fighter has been dealt enough damage to take them out of action, you roll a magic dice, and on a lightning symbol, that friendly fighter makes an attack action that must target the attacker. Lightning symbols are alright. I mean, it's a 50% chance because a critical doesn't count here. So, we've seen this card before, the 50-50 attack back. They don't usually see a lot of play, so I doubt this one will see play, but, it's kind of fun. And for like a starter deck build, I mean, why not, right? It's a fun card to have. Next, we have a very interesting card. It is Vicious Barbs. Choose an enemy who is next to a friendly fighter. They are uninspired, and they cannot inspire until the end of the round, at which point, if they are still alive, they re-inspire. This is a really interesting card because, for example, let's talk about like Moloch, right? If you go first in a round and you charge him and then you play this card, he's fucked for that round. It really reduces their offensive capability. This is true for a number of, big target heroes in warbands because uninspired versions suck. But the thing I like about the balance is that you can't play it on somebody preemptively. If you're not next to them, you can't play it. So it's not like you can say, oh, hey, Sepsimus, I'm not next to you. Now you're one shield and I'm going to come kill you. You will have had to have made a charge or made a move or be next to them. So there is some balancing in that regard. But I think this is a great card. I think there's a lot of implications for it. Yeah, really good. I think this is going to be a winner here. Next we have Shared Pain. This is such a sweet card. It's so good. It's the best. I love this card. You play this during an enemy fighter's attack action that targets a friendly fighter, after the deem success step. So firstly, this is a nice reaction window. It's not totally cancelable. You have priority, so this is saucy. Now, when you resolve the deal damage step, you can choose another friendly fighter within 3 hexes, which is quite large. That fighter suffers the damage rather than the original target, and then the combat sequence ends. What's also interesting about this whole combat sequence ends is I think it prevents pushback. I think it prevents, other cards being played potentially. We're going to have to weigh in with the really meta thinkers in the community. But I think the ending of this sequence is actually kind of cool. I think it prevents some reactions from happening. But this is crazy powerful. I mean, I wonder, is there a high health fighter in this warband who might want to take some hits? Yeah, dude, Slaanesh, for sure. I mean, this is such an amazing card, and it's made more amazing by the upgrade, Sickening Resilience. I mean, you throw that shit on somebody, and then you play this card and activate Sickening Resilience, and you are laughing. So this is one of the coolest ploys I think we've ever seen in Warhammer Underworlds. I love it. Really cool design. Amazing. Next we have Rush of Sensation. There's a lot of sensation in these cards here. Play this after a friendly fighter's attack action that takes an enemy fighter out of action. That friendly fighter can make 1 move action. This is good. I mean, killing someone and moving after is great. It would help you really close the distance. You could move up, kill someone, move on to an objective. I think that there's good implications for this card, for sure. Especially if you start next to an enemy fighter. I mean, if you start next to somebody, kill them, then move next to another enemy fighter, great. I should also mention with fighters like Glacette, where the ideal strategy is a hit and run tactic, a card like this is really good because you go and kill someone and use your 6 hex threat range to get the hell out of there. So really good card. Now we're moving on to the upgrades. There are some good ones here, a little less exciting, but there are a couple gems. So the first one is Sword Shattering. It's Vasilak specific. Basically, when Vasilak is targeted by an attack action, you roll a dice. If it's a hammer, they have to discard an upgrade. Don't love it. So next we have an upgrade called Cruel Volley. Now this is a Hadzu specific card. After your first range 3+ attack action that round, you can make another. Now this is interesting because double tapping is always sweet. However, running character-specific cards is kind of scary. For a range fighter, though, it's a little bit safer. And furthermore, because of the attached push, right, you could potentially be pushing someone 2 hexes towards you or in a lethal hex or something. And that's actually inherently pretty scary. So of the range-specific upgrades we've seen, this is one of the best. And I think it's worth contemplating. Again, got to get a feel for how this is working. Again, you could also make a range 3 attack on one person, on another, and help get that damage out to inspire your warband. What's also interesting is the attack action doesn't have to be made against the same target. So you can actually, if you're going last in a round, you could go in and push 2 fighters off of 2 objectives, which is very strong. Next we have Swift as Desire. Very good card. +1 move, great. +2 move if this fighter has 1 or more wound tokens on them. Perfect. I mean, any movement card that gives you 1 is just as good as, great speed. And then the fact that there's an addition, awesome. Now this Warband's move 4, so I don't think that they are hurting for that movement, but if you were going to choose one, this is great, so I'm happy to have it. Next we have Strength from Pain. Now it's +1 damage to your range 1 or 2 attack actions, as long as you have 1 wound counter on your fighter. This is important because, great strength is good, and Sting of the Grub is great, but the Sting is only range 1, and 3 fighters in this warband have not range 1 attacks, so, Sting is useless for them. However, the idea of having +1 wound on your 2 health fighter is like, it's not great. So this is probably important, but it's, there you go. Next we have Soporific Musk. Enemy fighters that begin a movement within 2 hexes of this upgrade have -1 move to a minimum of 0. This is interesting. You put this on Slaanesh, you throw them in the enemy line, and now it makes your back line harder to get to. I think that this is interesting. Maybe cool. Probably not. Next we have the upgrade to end all upgrades. This is absolutely sweet. It is Sickening Resilience. When this fighter is dealt damage, roll a defense dice. On a shield, this fighter is only dealt 1 damage. I know it's not great. There's only 2 shields on a 6-sided dice. It's not, shield and crit. It's essentially, the worm spat gimmick, but it's a bit better because you're dealt 1 damage only. So, you could take an inspired Moloch swing to the face, and if you roll that shield, you're just taking a damage, which is nice. So we're gonna have to see. I mean, it's high risk, high reward, right? Like this thing can shut some shit down. It's not a reaction, it just happens, it can't be interrupted. So I think I like this card. I think it pairs extremely well with that ploy card we talked about earlier, Shared Pain, so we'll see. Next we have Sadistic Goad. The attack damage characteristic of this attack is 1 plus the number of the target's wound counters. So it's kind of like a finisher, I guess, right? Like it's kind of weird. If they have 1 wound on them, you're going to hit them for 2. It's not very good if they're not wounded. It could help you take down like some big boys, I guess. I don't love it, but here we are. Next we have Mark of the Dark Prince. This is a Slaanesh specific upgrade. During this fighter's range 1 attack action, before the attack roll, you can deal a damage to Slaanesh. If you do, you can choose Cleave or Ensnare, and then the attack action benefits from those. This is really, really interesting. Slaanesh, rolls 3 dice uninspired, and so picking Cleave or Ensnare is really important. I mean, he could be a dodge warband murdering machine. Taking damage is also okay because that's important for a number of this warband's cards. It helps them inspire, and having that flexibility, 1 card doing 2 things, and on such a resilient fighter, right, 5 health, I think it actually is going to be worth running. I think this is a really cool card just to get her done. Next we have Distracting Ostentation. -1 dice from attack actions made by enemy fighters adjacent to this fighter to a minimum of 1. We've seen this card before. I believe it's on maybe Lady Harrow or maybe it's on Ylthari, and it didn't see a lot of play. I mean, there's just a lot of ways to kind of get around it, and there's a decent amount of range to attack, so we'll see. And lastly, we have Dance Without End. This is a Glacette specific card. Reaction: after another friendly fighter's move action, push this fighter 1 hex or 2 hexes if you first deal 1 damage to this fighter. This is a cool card. It's too bad that it's a specific card for her. Obviously she doesn't have a ton of resilience. I love the flexibility that you could push her 2 if you take a damage. I wish that this was a non-specific upgrade, because I think that that would be really nifty. Obviously, it's a bit like Duelist Speed in that regard, but I think that's a really nice touch. Because it's on her, though, I don't know. Well, there you have it, folks. The Dread Pageant in all its entirety. I must say, having waited for the inspired side of the fighter cards, they're not actually that devastating. I mean, Vasilak getting damage and cleave, that's no joke. And Slash getting a little bit more accurate. He's a very strong fighter to start, one of the strongest. And the other two, fair enough. I think that now that we kind of get the full picture, I think the 2 warbands will face off fairly well together. You have the Myari's Purifiers, who are accurate, and they do generally more damage, and that accuracy is really going to help them get through, Glissette and kind of pile on. Even though they have 3 health, getting to that 3 health, it might be a little bit hard because, the Dread Pageant don't quite have that. And there's going to have to be this weird control aspect of dishing out 6 wounds without, killing people and taking them off the board. So I think this actually is going to be an exciting core set. I do think generally the Dread Pageant have more tools at their disposal. I think, their objectives generally are better. They have some good ploys and good upgrades, whereas I think the Myari's Purifiers seem to have bad objectives and, good ploys and good upgrades. So anyway, I like the Dread Pageant better, straight up. Who do you like better? Let me know in the comments section below. I hope you enjoyed, and stay tuned for my Universal card review, which should come out shortly. Thanks. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. Please consider supporting the channel by liking this video or subscribing to the channel, and especially hitting that bell icon. Feel free to leave comments in the comments section below. I love talking with you guys. Until next video, I'll see you then. Thanks.